Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for Where I'm From 76. I'm Allison. Ivana is going to join me in just a minute. And what are you reading? I have read Home is a Made Up Place by Ronit Plank. Many of you know her. She's wonderful. Her book is wonderful. She's and I feel very fortunate to know and be in community with so many talented women. It's going to work this time, Ivana. Accept. Invite, accept. I don't know why it's not working. I see you, and I've invited you, and I've accepted you, Ivana. Ugh is right. um, Sonia, thanks for trying again. Sean, thanks for trying again. We're having, and you're on your phone. I'm sure you are. I don't know why this isn't working. Okay. It says she's unable to join. Okay, I'll stay on. Oh gosh, that means I have to vamp. So but luckily I can about this book, Home is a Made Up Place. I have it on Kindle because I pre-ordered it the minute it was available, which first it was available on Kindle. So I should probably buy a hard copy too, but I haven't yet. Neat. Is wonderful and very talented. And I really enjoyed the short story collection because the title, Home is a Made Up Place, and you can see it's a broken plate that's all taped together. It's a collection of short stories, and they do really make a person think about the construct of home and family and how we spend a lot of our lives looking for it, and sometimes we find it and sometimes we don't. And it was just really, I was impressed by I did invite you. I sent you a request, Ivana. I see you, and I invited you again. I've invited you twice, and you are asking to join me, and I'm accepting. Oh God. Sean, are you there with Ivana? Are you providing moral support in this moment? Because this is frustrating. Hey, we did it!
Yay! Oh my God. Wait, let me make sure my makeup looks good. Hi.
You look great, of course. I was
Thank
just
you.
here, just pushing send a request,
No, that was I was just I felt like a third grader because I was I have a poem that I've written
That's
and
right.
I did a little bit of highlighting, and now I would like to be on Allison's live. There we go.
We just had to keep pushing the button over and over again.
Hi, Alan.
It felt so silly. Thank you, Sonia. I
Thank you,
appreciate.
Sonia. I felt those vibes. Sonia and Sean, from the
I
jump,
know.
you were original adopters. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And Sonia's been on here, so she knows the anxiety that goes with. It should just work really well, and it does maybe 50% of the time. It says so. It likes to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Sean, for your
Thanks, Sean.
support. Um, well, I'm so glad you're here. Ivana is a real life friend. I mean, you're all real life friends, but I see her in real life, and I
I
don't see a
mean,
lot of you in real life.
but we do talk on the phone quite a
Yes.
bit. And and especially lately, I was on your podcast last week. We're doing
Yes.
this, and next week we're going for a hike.
We're gonna go for a hike. As anyone who knows me knows, I love to walk and talk. I am not a very good person for lunch. I'm fine, but I don't love it sitting and eating and staring at each other. It's not, I don't like it as
Yeah,
much as
I get
walking with
that.
someone.
Yeah.
I feel like this is how I walk, by the way. Like this.
Good to know.
Yeah, so you're warned. You've been warned. I don't know. It just feels like organically things come up when you're walking. And I don't, sometimes with sitting and lunching, you feel the pressure for it to be of, I don't know, importance.
Sitting and lunching feels to me like when I came to visit LA when I was like a kid, and my mom and I would go to the Rose Cafe to look
Aww.
for Molly Ringwald. And then we would like go to AA meetings and try to find Roseanne. Like that's what
Did you
lunch
find them?
feels like. No, still looking, by the
Yeah,
way. Like still
Molly
looking.
Ringwald, that would have been like a real get.
Still.
I saw Ricky Schroeder, which is like he's not what he was at that time, but I saw him at Disneyland and we almost died.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certain people, like I remember I went into a Grey's Anatomy callback and Eric Stoltz was directing and I was just like, it was for like a co-star. I had to say like 2 lines and I was like, I'm so sorry, I can't do this. And he was like, it's totally fine. I was like, thank you, goodbye.
Isn't it funny who you get
Yeah,
that way about? It's
yeah.
not it's not predictable for me. I don't necessarily know until it's happening. The most starstruck I've ever been, and I'm actually very proud of who it was Gloria Steinem. And I feel like
Oh,
I
yeah,
was proud of myself that I was
that's
so
very
starstruck
wholesome
about
of
her.
you.
Mm-hmm.
That's very beautiful. I would be starstruck around Gloria, and she does have the X factor.
Yes, she absolutely
She
does.
does. Mm-hmm. She has the X factor. Yeah.
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 So that's I am like, and I did. My husband was like, "You're not gonna." I was like, "Oh, I am."
Oh yeah. No,
I'm
you see Gloria, you say something.
I'm going up to her and we're taking a picture, and it's happening.
Yes.
And it did.
Please post that picture in these show notes.
I can't because it's Instagram, but I should post it just because she's wonderful. And
yes.
And she was so gracious. I have to say, she could tell I was, you know, like beside myself with joy, and that's a pure thing.
Yeah, that's a very pure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was my biggest celebrity crush. Yeah. So, would you like to read your poem, or would you like to tell me your biggest celebrity that you found out about? Because I'm curious.
Oh, that's such a good story. I mean, I remember so coming to LA, well, I'll tie it into the theme of like where I'm from, but coming to LA was a big part of my childhood. Because I really wanted to be on a sitcom.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to be Blossom. And so I would dress as Blossom and come here with my mom. And I did see, we went to the Ivy for dinner often, where I would walk up to people's tables and ask them if they were willing to accept my headshot, which is how you make it in Hollywood, obviously.
A lot of chutzpah.
Yeah. I had a lot of chutzpah. I had a lot of chutzpah. And we saw Paula Abdul there with Emilio Estevez, like at the height. And there was like paparazzi everywhere. Like it was a big deal. That was a very big deal.
That was a huge deal.
That was very cool. Yeah. Yeah. So that was awesome. I think that was probably my biggest celebrity sighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if you can never match that because now you're a grown up. Because you'll never have
the timing of it.
Yes.
And I remember I had these really long black and white striped pants from Fred Siegel. And like we would go to the Betsy Johnson store. Like there were so many fun shopping memories, and I was wearing those it was fantastic. Yes.
That's such a good one. Oh man. Yeah. And both of those people are so 80s. Like so 80s. So 80s. Just icons. 80s icons.
Icons. Yeah. So
I'm so glad I asked.
Yeah, of course, Allison. Of course. Okay, so you want me to read this poem, and basically the way that the poem works, do we explain how it works, or do I just jump in and read?
You can feel free to explain it for those of us who are new to it, because your friends will watch this who have no idea.
Okay.
Yes, please explain it. And if you want, usually after I ask what the experience was like for you writing it, and if you want to talk about that now, you can, because I find it very interesting.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll just read it, and then you can explain whatever you want, because it's like okay. So the prompt is basically where I'm from, though, right?
Yes.
Oh my God, I feel so nervous. Like I'm reading
Poetry
a
does
poem.
that to people.
Yeah, this is very vulnerable. Yep. Sean, are you still there?
Of course he is. Where else would he be?
I don't know. He was like, oh, she's telling her Paula Abdul story. Okay, so and you have to excuse me. I have allergies or a cold or something, but okay. So I come from a long line of hockey sticks, originally from the city of North York, Toronto, as per Drake, the Six, the alcoholic brilliance and schizophrenic kindness of Canada. I emerge fully formed from the overactive imagination, coquette stylings of Peggy Lee and Canadian Bukowski. An American stuck inside of a Canadian stuck inside of an American. I come to Bloomingdale's honestly with remembrance of Holt Renfrew past in search of a life-changing trench coat. The love child of a mental institution in Hamilton and a well-financed communist bookstore, white dinner rolls and ocean spray, alleged cranberry juice. From the Jew who changed his name from Isaac Belitsky to Jack Bell in 1930s Mile End, Montreal, and sold magazine subscriptions to bored housewives. I'm a direct descendant of the slightly manic pixie dream girl having polite coat hanger abortions in clean back alleyways some might call Diet New York, New York Light, and the second ugliest girl in her class, taken to dances on bets of lost loonies and toonies, on the bookshelf where the misbehaved cats peed, to be stamped on, burned, donated, cared for, and finally taken to the curb where the next generation plays hockey till dusk. Thank you. Yay! Oh my
You
God, I
said
like
so
have
much with so
edits
little.
already. I have edits already. I'm like, oh, I was cut till dusk. I'm like already, I like literally have to edit while we're doing this. I'm like workshopping it. Like, it's so funny to write a poem.
It's good, right?
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, I think I have noticed because this is my 76th.
Wow,
So many of us have a
congratulations.
lot of gatekeeping around poetry where it's like, oh, that's for other people. Poetry's for smart
Mm-hmm.
people or artistic people or tortured people or whatever. I'm all of those things. I don't really know why. Yes, alleged cranberry juice was great. I agree
Thank
with
you so
Sean.
much.
I agree.
I mean, it's
Um,
really a rough draft, not to apologize, but like I was like, I've been like figuring this out because there were so many interesting prompts and things, and yeah, it was fascinating.
yeah, so for those of you who don't know, there's a poem by George L. Lyon called Where I'm From. And a, a very generous human being made these prompts. And I don't know who, and I should, but I don't. And I send them to people. I was introduced to the poem and I was like, this is amazing. I love listening to other people's poems. I just kind of started doing this on a lark. And so I sent whoever participates the prompts. And some people take it very literally and just do it like a Mad Lib. Like they fill in sensory detail, food, and which is great and wonderful. And some people follow none of the rules, which is also great and wonderful. It's just a good container to get us to consider where we're from, which many of us as we grow older don't really talk about as much in life, maybe in therapy or, in certain communities, but not like, and I miss that. Like, I really
Mm.
miss when people used to be like, oh, here's where I grew up. Here's something I remember about it.
Yeah.
I love hearing like what people ate and what it smelled like and what it looked like. And I love all that. So this has
Yeah.
been so
Oh,
fun
it's
for
so
me
cool.
because I get to know people I already know better. And then I also get to know people I didn't know. And it's just an opportunity because if I just like had people and said, hey, tell me about your childhood, you and I could do it. But most people, it might be a little bit like, what do you want to know? So
Yeah.
um, I just think the older I get, the more I sort of accept how much it is truly foundational where we're from. And it's in us, whether we're thinking about it or not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like kind of tipping my hat to like all of that in each of us. So
So cool. Yeah.
So that's what's behind it. So what was the experience like writing it, not reading, also reading it? Reading it out loud is different than writing it. That's for sure.
I mean, I really like, I immediately, as soon as I sat down, I was like, oh, okay, it's like this. And I don't want it to go into some sort of esoteric, like, I'm from a can of syrup that, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like,
You're
no, like, I was
Canadian.
like, yeah, like, my first response, as is often my first response to anything, is just rage. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, this is so, like, it was so Mad Libby. And I was like, ugh. And then I was like, okay. And then I was like, how am I going to win? And because obviously I have to write the
Uh-huh.
best where I'm from ever. So I was like,
That's right.
okay. What am I going to do here? And then I was like, okay, and then I thought about my father, because my father wrote all these satirical poems about being Canadian and
Mm-hmm.
was like a satirical writer. And I was like, what would my father do? Like, how would he write this poem? And that's when I started to get into, and then I started doing sort of drafts where I was like, okay, I'm from Tim Hortons. I'm from Hockey Sticks. I'm
Mm-hmm.
from, and almost like there's this way sometimes I think with Canadian humor where we make fun of the way people make fun of Canadians. Do you
For
know what I
sure.
mean? Like there's like
Yes.
that, like making fun of, like, I'm from a long line of moose, like I'm from a long line of moose and women who are so repressed they have to leave the room to change their minds. Like I just started like riffing on all of the Canadian ways that I could, do you know what I mean? Oh, this is so nice to see certain people joining. Hi.
Isn't it fun?
Yeah, it's really sweet. But anyway, so that's like that's where I immediately went. And then as I went deeper into it, I was like, there is something like my acting teacher is here. That's why I'm about to say this. Like in acting class, you like work from the outside in. Do you know what I mean? So there's something about the that process of working from just being really strict with the prompts that was really fun. So then I like approached it from like that way, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be very just following the prompts to the letter. And then that did take me to a deeper place of identity, and I loved it, because then it was like you're going deeper and deeper, like, oh, I'm, yes, North York, but Jewish and Montreal and salesman and da 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 da. And it kind of brought me to a deeper, clearer place. Although I do feel I disappointed the ghost of my father in the writing of this poem.
Because it wasn't satirical enough.
Yeah.
That's
I feel like that should be a line in the poem. I do. Can that be the last line? I do feel I've
yeah.
disappointed the ghost of my father in the writing of this poem.
That's a good one. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's what it's like. That's what's hanging over the whole thing. Because in the prompt it's like, where do you keep memories or where do you keep
Yeah.
photos and that's you're keeping that the memory of your father is with you. I mean, it does address the prompt, is what I'm saying, and it also is powerful.
Oh, thanks, Allison. Yeah, it was a really, really cool prompt. And I think that part of it, like I think everybody should do it, by the way. Like, I want to give it to all my
I
writing
agree.
students. I
Mm-hmm.
love it so much. But like, I feel like it corners you into sharing something in a way that's like you were saying, you can't just ask somebody, um, you know, what was your childhood like? I mean, of course you can in LA. That's like all we basically talk about. But
Yeah,
to have an
I would say
artful
that once you have
response.
kids, that question becomes a lot less common and a lot more loaded.
Oh,
And it kind
yeah,
of like migrates
yeah.
out of your life because, you just want to be, okay, I'll speak for myself. I just wanted to be like palatable and lovely. I never wanted to be the mom who people are like, you can't play with those kids because have you seen her? Because I was that kid to some extent. So I was very actively trying not to be that parent, like I was just like pretty vanilla.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And
Yeah,
I
it
was
was.
like, this feels great. Because I'm usually not that in most spaces. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, but then it got a bit then it became a corset I had to evolve. But there was a time there when it felt like, oh, this is kind of a nice break from being me.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I remember that there was a time when, like, my friends started having kids, and I was like, oh no, does this mean I have to stop talking about my childhood? Like it did feel weird when like they're bringing up what's going on for them as parents, and I'm like relating to their kids. Like I'm like, oh yeah, no, I
Yeah.
remember that. I
Mhm.
remember feeling really insecure on the playground, and then I'm like, I can't really. This is inappropriate.
But it's true though. I mean,
Yeah.
even as a parent, you have the same. For me, it has been, and I've told people this, like, it's been very startling. Like, oh, that's what eight is like, because that is not how I remember it. Like,
I've heard that.
I do
Yeah.
not remember six looking like that, or eight, or 10, or, and I think of what I was doing at those ages, and it's a little destabilizing.
Do you remember yourself as physically larger than you see your kids
For
as? Like, do you
sure.
remember yourself almost
Yeah.
as grown-up size when you
Yes.
remember, and then you see the
Yes.
size of your own kids and it blows your mind?
Yes.
Wow.
And also just so much of that, like, you're so wise, you're such an old soul, and I really just took all that to heart. Like, oh, I am wise, I am an old soul, I'm so mature. And like that was good. And now it's a different framing. Like, oh yeah, I was just 10. It's young. It's really young. I did not feel young at 10. I never really felt young. Did you?
Yeah,
Mm.
I still do. There's just a part of me that always feels like a kid, like I can't, yeah. But I I was called precocious a lot
For sure.
and definitely told that I had an active imagination, which is true. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's why I wrote I come from I emerged fully formed from the overactive imagination coquette stylings of Peggy Lee. Because I always wanted to be like Marilyn Monroe or Peggy Lee, or like I was like a very coquette as a little, like I would like stand in front of the mirror with a hairbrush and sing Fever and be like, let's work on a dance routine or whatever. And my parents were like, you're going to be a playwright.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got to be, very serious and like literate and intelligent. And I was like, okay, like, okay, I'll work on that.
I didn't even know playwright was a job.
I
So
mean,
that's
is
it was
it?
like, okay, an avocation? How's that?
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
definitely like yeah, it's an avocation. Yeah, I like that a lot. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
job is probably a misnomer, but I wanted to be an actress. But the thing you were
That's so
saying, and this came
interesting.
up with something a couple weeks ago with another poem. In the poem, she talked about the Brady's and different sitcom families. And I also had that desire to be in a sitcom. And I think it was because I
Yeah.
just kind of wanted that to be life a
Yeah.
bit. Like there's a happy ending and it's very containable, and like all these problems get solved and they're not that grave, the problems.
Yeah.
I mean, they're treated with it as if they are, but we all know no one's going to die. It's a sitcom.
Right. Right.
you know
Yeah, like I remember in the early 2000s when I was 8 years old. Just kidding, but like when I was a kid. Remember how?
Wow,
Yeah,
no wonder
no.
you feel young.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I just am, but I just am so young. It's so wild. And I just have so much to learn, Allison. And
Right.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
a lot to learn.
I love having younger friends, so I'm so
Yeah,
grateful.
oh,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. Like
Yeah.
you'll have to really keep up with me on that walk next week. But like, remember the backs of TVs were so big.
Yes, and
One
impossible to
of
move.
yeah, one of my earliest memories was like maybe 3 or 4. I repeatedly tried to climb into the back of the TV because I wanted to eat with the Cosbys. And I really believed if I got into the like that I could climb in and somehow like sit with them all for dinner. And I do remember when my mom and I came here when I was a kid, we went to a sitcom taping. And I remember watching the lead actress who was like, maybe I was like 12 and she was like 14 or something like that. Or I was like 11 and she was 13. And I remember her asking the director, like, what's my motivation for moving from the sofa to the chair or whatever? And I just thought that was like the coolest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went back to Toronto and I was just like, well, what's my motivation? Like, well, what, like, I just thought that was like the best. Like, I was like, how do I make this my job of walking from a sofa to a chair and asking, what's my motivation?
Mm-hmm. That phrase, when it's first introduced into anyone's personal lexicon, I think is very powerful. It's like,
Very powerful. You're like, I don't have to do something unless I'm motivated. Like, I don't really know what my objective
uh-huh.
is,
And you need to
so
tell me why I'm motivated.
you need
And
to
then
tell
you
me.
need to do a good job. You know, I'm not just going to do anything.
I'm not just walking
Yeah.
between furniture here. Why?
Oh yeah, and it also just sounded so smart and
Oh my
so
God.
like
So I just thought she was so sophisticated. Like I was like, oh my God. It's just, yeah.
I would have felt similarly. I did not go to a taping until I was in my 20s, and by then I was like, oh, this is really boring. Like, oh, this takes a very long time, and I see why this is a job. But at that age, I would have been like, the
Oh,
magic.
the magic. The magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts before we wrap up on poetry or magic? Or I also just want to say I loved the Manic Pixie Dream Girl reference because I had not really thought about, for me, and I don't know if this is how it was intended, but for me, it made me think of, I'm from a line of women who have been called insane and institutionalized, and
Mm.
and how close that line is to being a manic pixie dream girl. Like those women we were putting in institutions 80 years ago now are just quirky,
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Oh,
if
I
they're
just,
lucky. I mean,
yeah.
women are still being institutionalized, but they're not as widely, not as
Yeah.
often, like just every time they do something that seems original. I don't like that. I don't like it. So it made me think of
Yeah.
that, and I just thought it was powerful. So.
Oh, thanks, Allison. I just think you're such a cool feminist voice, and I think that we're so lucky to have you in our lives and in our I just think this is such a cool thing that you're doing. So thanks so much for having me. And I loved writing that poem
Oh, I'm so
eventually.
glad. I'm so glad when people enjoy it, and most people seem to, and that it's not like a grind, because I do want it to
No.
actually be enjoyable, and our conversation to be enjoyable. And it is always a treat to talk to you. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Allison. Mwah. See you on our walk.
Yeah, that's right.